Good afternoon. I'm Dwight Palmquist, and I'm right now in Minnesota in the backyard of my brother's place in Cambridge. First of all, I'd like to greet all of the pastors from the Phil-Am community in the United States. I appreciate all of you accepting the call of God to come to the largest mission field in the world, which happens to be the United States. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako'y nagagalak na maparito sa United States. This is my second time since 1999, so I don't come back very often. For those that may not understand Tagalog, mayong hapon sa tanan. Kinahanglang gyud mo sulti og Bisaya sa Amerika. Mahapos kayo maghambal sang Inilonggo, diri ako makakayakan in Waray, Guti Ayla. There's so many languages. Eko biyasang magsalitang Kapampangan, and I know some of you are from another language group in the Philippines, and I apologize for not knowing more of the languages there, but I count it a privilege to serve in the Philippines, partnering with Filipino pastors for now it's been 43rd year as I've traveled through the country. I should be back in about 3 months again to the Philippines, and I need your prayers because the Lord has sent me back into some very dangerous places. Right now I'm on the island of Mindanao, and I've been ambushed 4 times, shot at 3 times, and the grace of God, I'm still alive. But many of you also have a very interesting story of how God protected you, possibly here in the United States. All of us do not know how many times God protected us, and we're not aware of it. And so it's a great privilege to be serving God, and we know the Lord is coming soon, but the scriptures tell us to occupy till He comes. I also want to congratulate Filipinos on the 75th anniversary. Next year, it's still 1 year away, and many of you will be at the 100th anniversary here in the United States. So these are exciting times. All of us also face some problems in the churches. You may have some difficulties where you're at right now, reaching out to the people that God has called you to. But I just want to remind you that Jesus Christ has had 2,000 years experience at solving New Testament church problems. And so there's no problem in the church that God cannot solve. We just have to all humble ourselves and look to Him and expect Him to work miracles. And ministry to the congregation is so important, to believe God for healing. I always ask for very big requests from the Lord, and I leave the results to God. And anything that was accomplished in my ministry, first of all, I give glory to God, because the older I get, the more I realize that it is God working in me to accomplish His purpose. Secondly, for anything that was accomplished in the Philippines, thank God for the dedicated team that I traveled with, sometimes music and drama team. Other times I traveled alone, but never really alone, because as I come to a district, there is always so many Filipinos that have helped me, especially in the area of follow-up. I have so many invitations that I travel from one place to another every night almost, because some of you have heard, by the way, that I have no home in the Philippines for 42 years. That has been my story, but actually it's much easier not to have a home, because if I had a home, I would have to find somebody to stay there and somebody to guard the place, have to rent a home, and then it would be a waste of rent because I would be seldom there. So I find it much easier to travel through the country from one district to another. In the last 2 years, I traveled from General Santos to Butuan on the island of Mindanao, and that's about 10 to 11 hour ride if you have a private car. But that took me more than 2 years because there were 500 churches in between, and in the 2 years we ministered night after night, one church after another, most of them only one night. Many times because of the danger I could not stay longer than one night, but thank God for Filipinos that followed up. One place in particular, by the way, I'm sure this will be edited because I'm going to make it a little bit longer, so this can be edited by Jaron or anybody at the Philam meeting. But one place in particular, I remember I was in Sarangani province, right at the boundary of Davao del Sur, and we went up to Malongon and past Malongon all the way to the boundary of Davao del Sur, and I could bring my car to a certain place, Upper Mainit, and then we left the car there and we traveled by motorbike as far as we could. And then I looked at this tall mountain pass, high mountain pass, and I'm 68 now, 67 then, and I cannot forget how I felt as I saw a pass that was relatively easy for me to pass several years back, but now I'm not young anymore, and so I have to really trust the Lord. I looked at that mountain, I said, God, if anything is going to happen here, it has to be you. You really have to give me strength to cross over this mountain pass. And so they put my equipment on a horse, the generator on one side, the Fender sound system on the other side, and all my other equipment, projector, computer that we use connected to a projector, and they put that on the top in a box and tied it well to the horse. I was absolutely amazed that even in a very hot climate, the horse can make it all the way. And I had trouble halfway up, to be honest. It was so hot and there was no wind. And some of you remember the Philippines can get pretty hot sometimes. And I was so happy when I reached the top. But just over the hill, I was talking to a member of a church that was only 3 years old. I do not remember the name of the pastor. He's a Kaolo pastor, and this is a Kaolo tribe, but he pioneered this area, and then we helped him to build just the shell of the church and the roof so that they could start the service. And I was amazed. Can you imagine that there are still places in the Philippines where there's no church, Catholic, Protestant, no other religion? It's just animistic. And as you know, this is very uncommon for the Philippines. Most places have been reached. And as you know, the Philippines is very civilized and have big shopping centers and all this. But back in the mountains, there are some unreached areas, pockets, where nobody has reached these people yet. And the districts will challenge people to go beyond the borders where they have reached and to extend to the next valley, especially in a mountain area. And so I'm so challenged. I would love to tell you I have been to a place where I have been the first to pioneer a church. I've never done that because Filipinos always go there first, and that is my choice. Because if I go and have a crusade and there's no local church, who will follow up? How will these people be brought into maturity, in Jesus Christ. And so I felt it was so important to work with Filipinos, and they do a great job, and we're going to someday rejoice together. But just as in an army, the backup team is so important, and those on the front line are also important. And I'm speaking of Filipinos in both places now. And the leadership is so important of the PGCAG to stand behind us and supply literature and ideas and tools to do a job that definitely makes our work a lot more effective. And our Bible colleges also, who train Filipinos to go into areas like this. By the way, the education system that we have in an area like this, I should say, they send teachers. One teacher will volunteer once a month. So once a week, 2 teachers will hike across that high mountain pass. And then there's 7 or 8 pastors. There's about 8 churches back in that area. They will come for training, 1-day, 2-day training back there. And these are places, most of them, there's only one church in its Assembly of God. But we do thank the Lord for other groups, other churches, and we do work together to evangelize any area. I love to see Christians work together for the glory of God. But I was talking to this new convert, and just to briefly explain in an area like this, the contrast of what they were before they found Christ and what they are now. And before they found Christ, amazing what happened. These people, the man told me, you know, I used to beat up my wife and kids, and I was very cruel to my family. And this area, it was a lot of conflict. But when I found the Lord, the first thing I felt immediately when I received Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I found a new nature, a peace that I had never known before. The fears that I had in my life and the depression, all these things disappeared. And this man spoke very good Cebuano. He's Kaolo tribe, but he spoke very good Cebuano. I understood him perfectly. And the second thing, he said the spirit doctor in that place, you know, tried to put his strongest curse on 2 of the early converts 3 years before I arrived. And rather than be cursed, they were blessed. And nobody in that little village of 20 houses, 20 families, had ever seen this before. The witch doctor's power was challenged. And people were just so surprised because this man now had the power of God. And so then others saw what was happening, and they found the Lord also. And the third thing that happened was heaven. You know, the pastor talked about the promise of Jesus in John 14, where he said, I go to prepare a place for you. I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And they said, at least this man told me, they had no definite hope of heaven, although the idea of heaven was passed on for generations. Very little was talked about as the description of what heaven really was. But in the Bible, it's very clear. 1 Corinthians 2:9, eye has not seen nor ear heard the things that God has prepared for those who love them. And when you translate verses like that in Kaolo, in the language of the people, oh, they just really get excited. Well, then another thing happened, and it was part of the harvest. You know, there were some militant groups in the area, and I don't know how strong they were, but these people had a problem at harvest time. There were some rebels that had come into their area, and they would steal part of the harvest. And with AK-47 or M16 machine guns, they had no protection, and so they just had to accept that as a fact of life. But the story I'm going to tell you now was very exciting, because I hope that I got it as I was told. But two of the communist people that were part of this group that had come to steal the harvest actually got saved, and this is the story that they told. As this small communist group was coming up into this area to steal the harvest again, part of it, they saw this tall man in white above them, and the two leaders in front looked at each other and they said, "Oh, so somebody's going to try to challenge us." And they have machine guns, they're not afraid, but they look back and this man disappeared. You and I know this to be an angel, but there's no place for him to hide. There's no trees there. It's a field area, and there's no rocks to hide behind and all of this. But still, the communist leaders did not feel that this was God, but they said, "Oh, the spirit doctor, the witch doctor must be very powerful in this place. The anting or fetish, you know, they must have some type of protection." But there was something that they had experienced. It was the fear of God. And so they come to the conclusion that they will just go to other areas. And for a kilometer square area, about that wide an area, they did not bother these people. And this was the area where our pastors, not only in the area which I was at that time, our pastors had ministered to these people. We had a very good service that night. We showed the film Jesus. I edited this film, which is over 2 hours long, I believe, and we cut it down to 45 minutes, and then it's in Cebuano, understood by the people. And imagine showing the film Jesus. It's the most anointed film that I could ever show in an area like that. It's been translated in over 1,100 languages. It's been shown to more than half of the population of the world. Philippines, 11 languages. We have the privilege of showing that film. At the end of that film, most of you know that it ends with the ascension of Christ into heaven. We have a second film in Cebuano, Alpha Omega, and we just edited that film also to begin at the point of the ascension. So now the second coming of Christ, the second part where he comes in the clouds, and illustrated beautifully on film. You know, the modern techniques of making film, unbelievable. And then what they did is they took several popular films on the destruction of the world, and they copied that, and it really looked like the world was being destroyed. And you could see in the second coming of Christ how people were afraid, and then as the world was being destroyed, the hopelessness, the terrible future that's awaiting those that don't know Christ. And I challenge people you know, to just consider this, because this is going to happen. So then after that, on the film, it shows the second coming of Christ. I'm going to you'll have to edit it at this point. I hope you can do it okay.